The antiseptic smell of the hospital room, sharp and sterile, warred with the coppery tang of blood that clung to the air. Jiang Wan's vision swam, the edges blurring into a hazy white as the aftershocks of labor pulsed through her exhausted body. A low, insistent hum, like the drone of a distant airplane, resonated within her ears, blocking out the hurried whispers of the medical staff. She felt a strange detachment, as if observing her own body from a great distance. Her hand, trembling, reached out, grasping at the empty space beside her. "My babies," she thought, the word echoing in the hollow cavern of her mind. "Where are my babies?" A doctor, his face etched with a strange mixture of exhaustion and pity, approached her bedside. He spoke gently, his voice a low murmur that seemed to slither through the fog in her brain. "Successfully gave birth to quintuplets," he said, the words hanging in the air, heavy with an unspoken weight. Jiang Wan's heart leaped, a brief flicker of joy in the overwhelming weariness. 5 precious lives. She had carried them, nurtured them, felt their tiny movements within her. 5 miracles. But the doctor's next words shattered the fragile hope like thin ice. All died young. The hum in her ears intensified, drowning out the doctor's subsequent explanations, the medical jargon washing over her in meaningless waves. Died? How could they be dead? Just moments ago, she had felt them, alive and vibrant within her. A chilling wave of disbelief washed over her, followed by a surge of raw, primal grief that tore through her like a jagged shard of glass. Her breath hitched in her throat, a silent scream trapped within her chest. The world tilted on its axis, the sterile white of the room turning into a swirling vortex of despair. She wanted to see them, to hold their tiny bodies, to whisper apologies for a life they would never know. But her body, ravaged by the ordeal of childbirth, refused to cooperate. She was trapped, a prisoner in her own exhausted form, her mind reeling, her heart splintering into 1,000 pieces. "No, no, no," she chanted silently, the words a desperate plea against the crushing reality. Unseen by Jiang Wan, in the bustling hallway outside, a man stood cloaked in shadows, his face obscured by the dim lighting. Fu Nanxiu, known then only as Fugue, felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he overheard the doctor's words. His carefully constructed plans, the elaborate web of secrecy he had woven to protect Jiang Wan and their children, threatened to unravel. A wave of nausea washed over him. Dead? The word echoed in his mind, a cruel mockery of the future he had envisioned. He had promised himself, promised Jiang Wan, that he would keep them safe. He stepped closer to the room, drawn by an irresistible force, a desperate need to see her, to reassure himself that she was all right. But he hesitated, his hand hovering over the door handle. He was Fugue now, not Fu Nanxiu, the powerful CEO of the Fuji Group. He was a simple worker, a nobody, a ghost in her life. Could he face her now, burdened by this devastating news, knowing his true identity would only complicate matters further? Inside the room, the doctor continued to speak, his words a distant drone against the roaring in Jiang Wan's ears. He mentioned a peculiar detail, a distinguishing mark on the soles of the baby's feet, a small, crescent-shaped birthmark. He spoke of the rarity of such a mark, occurring in all 5 infants. The detail, seemingly insignificant in the face of such tragedy, registered somewhere in the recesses of Jiang Wan's mind. A tiny anchor in the vast ocean of her grief. She clung to it, a desperate attempt to hold on to something, anything, in the face of overwhelming loss. A crescent moon, she thought, the image flickering behind her eyelids. My little moons. Outside, Fu Nanxiu froze, his blood turning to ice. A crescent moon birthmark. It was the mark of his family, passed down through generations. A mark he had prayed would never appear on his children, a mark that would tie them to his complicated, dangerous world. His carefully constructed facade began to crumble, the weight of his secrets pressing down on him with renewed force. He had to know. He had to see them. He pushed open the door, his heart pounding against his ribs. The sight that greeted him sent a fresh wave of pain through him. Jiang Wan lay pale and still on the hospital bed, her eyes closed, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. The room was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and the lingering ghost of life lost. He wanted to rush to her side, to hold her, to whisper words of comfort. But he remained rooted to the spot, the chasm of his deception separating them. He was Fugue, the helpless bystander, not Fu Nanxiu, the man who could have, perhaps should have, prevented this tragedy. He watched her, his heart aching with a grief so profound it threatened to consume him. The guilt gnawed at him, a relentless beast clawing at his insides. He had failed her. He had failed his children. He had built a fortress of lies to protect them, and in the end, it had crumbled around him, burying them beneath its weight. The doctor, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding at the doorway, prepared to leave. He paused, turning back to Jiang Wan, his voice softened with pity. "I'm truly sorry for your loss," he said, his words heavy with genuine sympathy. He glanced towards Fugue, a silent acknowledgement of the shared grief. "She'll need rest," he added softly, before quietly slipping out of the room, leaving Jiang Wan and Fugue alone in the suffocating silence. Fugue approached the bed cautiously, his steps slow and deliberate. He reached out, his hand hovering just above hers, wanting to touch her, to offer some small measure of comfort. But he hesitated, his hand trembling, the weight of his secrets holding him back. "What right do I have?" he thought, the question a bitter echo in his mind. He was the architect of this tragedy, the man who had orchestrated this elaborate charade, the man who had ultimately failed to protect them. He lowered his hand, his fingers brushing against the edge of the sheet, a fleeting, almost imperceptible contact. He stood there for a long moment, watching her sleep, his heart heavy with a sorrow that words could not express. The sterile white walls of the room seemed to close in on him, suffocating him with the weight of his guilt and the crushing reality of his loss. He had lost them all. His wife, his children, his future. He had lost everything. And in the silence of that sterile room, he vowed to find them. No matter the cost. The stale air in the Jiang family home hung heavy, thick with unspoken resentments and the bitter scent of jasmine tea long gone cold. Jiang Wan sat rigidly on the worn sofa, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, the fabric rough against her skin. Her father paced before her, a storm brewing in his narrow eyes. Each heavy footfall against the wooden floor echoed the pounding in her chest. He'd summoned her home, his tone clipped and demanding over the phone, offering no explanation. Now, the silence stretched, suffocating her with anticipation. A single, stark bulb cast long shadows across the room, accentuating the lines of worry etched deep into his face, lines she hadn't noticed before. What could be so urgent? What new misery does he have in store for me? She swallowed, the dryness in her throat mirroring the barren landscape of her hope. Finally, he stopped, his shadow looming over her. "You've shamed this family," he spat, the words like shards of glass. Jiang Wan flinched, but her gaze remained steady. Shame. She had endured more shame in the last few months than he could possibly comprehend. She thought of the hushed whispers at the factory, the pitying glances from her co-workers, the gnawing fear that twisted in her gut every time she looked at the growing swell of her belly. Shame was his, not hers. He thinks he can dictate my life, control me with his accusations. A flicker of defiance ignited within her. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. His voice dripped with disgust. "With that nobody's child." A wave of nausea rolled over her. Nobody's child. The phantom warmth of Fugue's hand on hers, the fleeting moments of tenderness they'd shared, flashed through her mind. Those memories, however fragile, were hers. And this child, this life growing within her, was a testament to something real, something precious. She straightened, her chin lifting a fraction. "He's not a nobody," she murmured, the words barely audible, yet laced with an unexpected steel. Her father's face contorted in rage. "Don't you dare defend him. He's a liar, a cheat. He abandoned you. He left you with nothing." He slammed his fist on the small table beside him, the force of the blow rattling the chipped porcelain teacups. The scent of jasmine tea, now tinged with dust and decay, filled the air again, chokingly sweet. Jiang Wan closed her eyes briefly, steeling herself. "He doesn't understand. He will never understand." Opening them, she met his furious gaze. "He didn't abandon me," she said, her voice stronger this time, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. Each word was a small act of rebellion, a desperate attempt to protect the fragile hope she clung to. He laughed, a harsh, grating sound that scraped against her nerves. "He promised you marriage, didn't he? Promised you a life of comfort. And what did you get? Nothing. You're ruined, Jiang Wan. Ruined." The words hit her like a physical blow. Ruined. The word echoed the whispers she'd heard, the judgments she'd endured. A burning anger began to simmer within her, chasing away the fear. "He's wrong. I'm not ruined. I'm stronger than he thinks." "There's a solution," her father continued, his voice now smoother, almost conciliatory. The sudden shift in his demeanor set off alarm bells in her mind. "Boss Wang is willing to overlook your situation. He's a good man, wealthy, influential. He can provide for you, give you the life you deserve." Jiang Wan's breath caught in her throat. Boss Wang. A man old enough to be her father, with a reputation as cruel and ruthless as her own. The thought of marrying him, of sharing her life, her body, with him, sent a shiver of revulsion down her spine. "Marry Boss Wang." The words came out strangled, barely a whisper. "It's the only way," her father said, his voice hardening again. "Get rid of the child, marry Boss Wang. It's for your own good, for the good of this family." The room seemed to spin. "Get rid of the child." The words pierced her like a knife, twisting in the raw wound of her loss. She thought of the tiny life within her, the fluttering movements that had begun to feel so familiar, so precious. She pressed a hand to her belly, a protective gesture. "No. He can't take this from me too." "I won't," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I won't marry him. And I won't," the words choked in her throat, the thought of ending this life, this fragile hope, unbearable. Her father's face turned a mottled red. "You dare defy me?" he roared, his voice shaking with rage. "After everything I've done for you? After all the sacrifices I've made?" "Sacrifices?" Jiang Wan laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "You call selling me to the highest bidder a sacrifice? You call using me as a pawn in your petty schemes a sacrifice?" He advanced on her, his hand raised. "You ungrateful wretch." Jiang Wan didn't flinch. She met his gaze, her own burning with a fire he had never seen before. "Or I don't have a daughter like you," he seethed, his voice dangerously low. "Get out of Zhang's house right now. Then you beat this bastard to me first." She placed her hand protectively over her stomach, her defiance unwavering. The air crackled with tension, the silence punctuated only by the ragged sound of her own breathing. The jasmine tea, now cold and bitter, seemed to mock her from the table, a symbol of the suffocating traditions and expectations she was determined to break free from. She was alone, yes, but she was also free. Free to make her own choices, to protect her own child, to forge her own destiny. And in that moment, in the face of her father's fury, she knew, with a certainty that surprised even herself, that she would not be broken. The biting wind whipped Jiang Wan's threadbare coat around her, a chilling reminder of the harsh reality she now inhabited. 5 years. 5 years since her life had shattered into a million irreparable pieces. 5 years since she last held her babies, felt their soft skin against hers, heard their synchronized breaths. The memory, a phantom limb, ached with a constant, dull throb. She clenched her jaw, pushing down the familiar wave of grief that threatened to engulf her. She had to be strong. She had to survive. For them. Even if they were gone. She scrubbed the grime from the opulent marble floor of the Fuji Group's lobby, the irony not lost on her. Here she was, cleaning the floors of a corporate giant, while her own life was a mess of broken dreams and unanswered questions. Each swipe of the mop felt like a self-inflicted wound, a constant reminder of how far she had fallen. "This is what you are now, Jiang Wan," a bitter voice whispered in her head, "a ghost of your former self." But beneath the layers of weariness and despair, a flicker of defiance ignited. "No," she thought, her grip tightening on the mop handle, "I will rise from this. I will rebuild." Years blurred into a montage of relentless work, each day a testament to her resilience. She learned to sew, creating exquisite designs from scraps of fabric, selling them at local markets. The money was meager, barely enough to cover rent and food, but each sale was a small victory, an affirmation of her talent. She devoured books on design, sketching late into the night, fueled by a burning desire to reclaim her life. Her small apartment, though cramped and sparsely furnished, became her sanctuary, a space where she could momentarily escape the harsh realities of her life and dream of a brighter future. The faint scent of jasmine tea, her only indulgence, clung to the air, a fragile shield against the world outside. Meanwhile, in a world of polished mahogany and hushed whispers, Fu Nanxiu, the enigmatic president of the Fuji Group, stared at the grainy photograph in his hand. Jiang Wan's face, younger, more carefree, stared back at him, her eyes filled with a light that had long since dimmed. Guilt, sharp and relentless, gnawed at his conscience. He was the architect of her ruin, the unwitting catalyst of her pain. His past actions, shrouded in a veil of secrecy and misguided intentions, had set in motion a chain of events that had led to this. He closed his eyes, the image of her tear-streaked face burned into his memory. "I will find you, Jiang Wan," he vowed silently, "I will make amends." His search was relentless, a clandestine operation conducted in the shadows. He pored over records, interviewed countless people, leaving no stone unturned. Each dead end fueled his desperation, the weight of his guilt growing heavier with each passing day. He could feel the phantom weight of her hand in his, the memory of their brief, stolen moments together, a bittersweet reminder of what he had lost. Sleep became a luxury he could ill afford, his nights haunted by visions of her suffering. The vastness of his wealth, the power he wielded, felt like meaningless trinkets in the face of his overwhelming need to find her, to atone for his sins. One rainy afternoon, as he drove through a bustling market, a flash of vibrant color caught his eye. A stall, overflowing with handmade clothing, each piece radiating an unmistakable elegance and originality. He stopped the car, his heart pounding in his chest. He recognized the intricate embroidery, the unique design aesthetic. It was her. Jiang Wan, oblivious to the figure watching her from a distance, haggled with a customer, her voice firm but gentle. The years had etched lines of worry onto her face, but her spirit, though battered, remained unbroken. A small, hesitant smile touched her lips as the customer agreed to her price. In that moment, Fu Nanxiu felt a pang of something akin to hope. She was alive. She was surviving. He watched her interact with her customers, her every gesture, every inflection of her voice, a symphony of strength and vulnerability. He knew he couldn't reveal himself to her yet. Not like this. Not when he was still entangled in the web of deceit that had ensnared them both. He began to frequent the market, observing her from afar, a silent guardian angel watching over his fallen angel. He learned her routine, her struggles, the small joys that punctuated her otherwise bleak existence. He arranged for her to receive lucrative commissions, anonymously guiding her career, nurturing her talent. He watched her blossom, her confidence slowly returning, her designs gaining recognition. It was a bittersweet experience, watching her flourish from the shadows, knowing he couldn't claim his place by her side. One evening, as Jiang Wan packed up her stall, a young boy, no older than 5, approached her, his eyes wide with wonder. "Mama," he whispered, clutching a small, intricately embroidered doll. Jiang Wan froze, her blood running cold. The word echoed in her ears, a painful reminder of what she had lost. She looked around, her heart pounding in her chest. 4 more children, identical to the first, materialized from the crowd, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Fu Nanxiu, watching from a distance, felt his own world tilt on its axis. Her children there alive. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had unknowingly orchestrated their reunion, his clandestine efforts to protect her inadvertently leading to this momentous occasion. He watched as Jiang Wan knelt down, her eyes brimming with tears, her hands trembling as she reached out to her children. The years of pain, the weight of her loss, seemed to melt away as she embraced them, her heart overflowing with a love she thought she had lost forever. The sight of their reunion, a testament to the enduring power of love and resilience, filled him with a bittersweet mix of joy and guilt. He knew he had to reveal himself to her soon. He had to face the consequences of his past actions, to finally tell her the truth. He owed her that much. And perhaps, just perhaps, they could rebuild the life that had been so cruelly stolen from them. The long road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in years, Fu Nanxiu felt a glimmer of hope. The dawn was breaking, and he was ready to face the light. The antiseptic smell of the hospital, sharp and sterile, clawed at Jiang Wan's nostrils, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Fu Nanxiu, or rather, the man she knew as Fugue, stood before her, an unreadable expression etched on his face. He had led her to this pristine, white room, the air thick with an unspoken tension she couldn't decipher. Sunlight streamed through the large window, painting stripes across the polished floor, but it couldn't penetrate the shadow that seemed to cling to him, a premonition of something monumental about to unfold. "Jiang Wan," he began, his voice low and resonant, each syllable a carefully placed stone on the unsteady bridge of her composure. She gripped the strap of her worn handbag, her knuckles white. What was this? Why were they here? Her mind raced, a whirlwind of fragmented memories and anxieties. The fear, the familiar icy dread that had become her unwelcome companion, began to creep up her spine. He paused, his gaze locking with hers, a strange intensity burning within those dark depths. It was a look she had never seen before in Fugue, a look that stripped away the gentle facade and revealed something powerful, almost dangerous. "There's something I need to tell you." Her breath hitched. She'd seen this look before, in the eyes of men who held power, men who dealt in secrets and lies. Men like her ex-husband. A shiver ran down her spine. No, this couldn't be happening again. She couldn't bear another betrayal. He took a step closer, the distance between them shrinking, the air crackling with unspoken words. "Something about our past." Past? What past? Their shared history was the humble cleaning company, the late-night shifts, his quiet support. What more could there be? Unless a terrifying thought sparked in her mind, a wild, improbable scenario. Could he be? No, it was too absurd. Too much. He drew a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to utter words that would shatter the fragile world they had built. These, he gestured towards the far side of the room, where 5 small beds lined the wall, each occupied by a tiny, sleeping form, are our 5 children. The words hung in the air, heavy and resonant, each syllable a hammer blow against the walls of her carefully constructed reality. Her breath caught in her throat, her mind reeling. 5 children. Hers. Theirs. The world around her seemed to tilt, the sterile scent of the hospital morphing into a suffocating wave. Her knees threatened to buckle, and she swayed, clutching the edge of a nearby table for support. 5 small faces, each a miniature echo of the man before her. The same dark hair, the same delicate features. Her heart constricted, a painful ache blossoming in her chest. Her babies. Her lost babies. Alive. A sob escaped her lips, a raw, guttural sound of disbelief and overwhelming joy. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision as she stumbled towards the cribs, her hands outstretched, trembling. "Mommy," a small voice whispered, barely audible above the rhythmic beeping of a nearby monitor. One of the tiny figures stirred, blinking sleepily up at her. "Mommy, we finally found you." The dam within her broke. Years of suppressed grief, of unanswered questions, of agonizing loss, poured out in a torrent of tears. She reached into the crib, her trembling fingers tracing the soft curve of a chubby cheek. The child, a little girl with eyes as dark and deep as the night sky, reached out and grasped her finger, her tiny hand surprisingly strong. Another child stirred, then another, until all 5 pairs of eyes were fixed on her, filled with a mixture of curiosity and affection. "Mommy," they murmured, their voices a chorus of sweet music that filled the desolate chambers of her heart. "You came back." Jiangwan sank to her knees, overwhelmed by the wave of emotion that washed over her. Her babies. Her lost treasures. Returned to her. She gathered them close, burying her face in their soft hair, inhaling their sweet, milky scent. This was real. This was not a dream. Fu Nanxiu watched, his expression unreadable. He had revealed his secret, the truth that had haunted him for so long. He was not Fugue, the humble cleaner. He was Fu Nanxiu, the powerful CEO, the man who had orchestrated this reunion, the man who had kept his children hidden, all for her protection. A complex web of guilt and love tightened around his heart. He had hurt her, betrayed her trust, but he had also brought her the greatest gift imaginable. He knelt beside her, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "I know you have questions," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "And I promise, I will answer them all. But for now, just be with our children." Jiang Wan looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion, relief, and a flicker of something akin to forgiveness. She couldn't speak, her voice choked with emotion. She simply nodded, her gaze returning to the 5 small faces that had filled the void in her heart. In that moment, surrounded by her children, the sterile hospital room transformed into a sanctuary, a haven of love and hope amidst the chaos of their intertwined lives. The future stretched before them, uncertain and daunting, but for the first time in a long time, Jiang Wan felt a flicker of warmth, a fragile ember of happiness rekindled in the ashes of her past. The fluorescent lights of the sales office hummed, a dull counterpoint to the chaotic symphony of ringing phones and chattering voices. Jiang Wan clutched the lottery ticket, its flimsy paper a tangible representation of a desperate hope. 5 little mouths to feed, 5 small bodies to clothe, 5 futures balanced precariously on her weary shoulders. The numbers swam before her eyes, a blur of possibility. Could this be it? A reprieve, a chance to breathe? She checked again, meticulously, each digit a lifeline. A gasp escaped her lips, a tremor ran through her hands. "I hit it." The words were barely a whisper, yet they echoed in the cavernous space of her own heart, a fragile melody of disbelief and nascent joy. Back in the cramped apartment, the air thick with the mingled scents of instant noodles and childish exuberance, the lottery win felt less like a miracle and more like a necessary intervention. Her 5 children, a whirlwind of tiny limbs and boisterous laughter, were oblivious to the weight that had just been lifted from their mother's shoulders. Their stepmother, a woman whose smile never quite reached her eyes, eyed Jiang Wan with a mixture of suspicion and resentment. "Lottery, you say? Let's see the ticket then." Her tone dripped with skepticism, each word a barbed hook designed to snag at Jiang Wan's fragile hope. Jiang Wan hesitated. A flicker of doubt, a shadow of past betrayals, crossed her face. Could she trust anyone? But the children, their bright eyes shining with innocent anticipation, dispelled her reservations. She showed them the ticket, their excited squeals a balm to her wounded spirit. Meanwhile, in the sleek, sterile environment of his office overlooking the city, Fu Nanxiu, known to Jiang Wan only as Fugue, wrestled with his own demons. The memory of their brief, clandestine marriage, a desperate attempt to protect her and the children he hadn't even known existed then, gnawed at his conscience. He'd built walls around himself, fortresses of wealth and power, designed to keep the world at bay. Yet, Jiang Wan, with her quiet strength and unwavering devotion to her children, had breached those defenses. He watched the grainy footage from the security cameras, a silent observer of her life, her struggles. The guilt was a physical ache, a constant pressure in his chest. He had to do something, anything, to ease her burden. Unbeknownst to Jiang Wan, her children, with their uncanny ability to sense their father's presence even across the chasm of their separate lives, were already orchestrating their reunion. Small acts of defiance, strategically placed whispers, and carefully timed tantrums chipped away at the stepmother's resolve. They missed their Fugue, the man who had, however briefly, brought laughter and stability into their lives. Their innocent machinations pushed Fu Nanxiu towards a decision he'd been both dreading and longing for. The evening he arrived at Jiang Wan's apartment, the air was thick with tension. The stepmother's simmering resentment had finally boiled over. Harsh words, accusations, and recriminations flew like daggers. Jiang Wan, her spirit worn thin by years of hardship, stood her ground, her voice trembling but firm. Fu Nanxiu, watching from the shadows, felt a surge of protective anger. This woman, this resilient, unwavering mother of his children, deserved more than this. He stepped into the light, his presence a sudden shift in the atmosphere. "Enough," he said, his voice a low rumble that commanded attention. The stepmother, startled by his unexpected appearance, faltered. Jiang Wan, her eyes wide with surprise, could only stare. The children, sensing a shift in the power dynamics, fell silent, their gazes fixed on their father. The silence stretched, taut and heavy with unspoken emotions. He turned to Jiang Wan, his gaze softening as it met hers. "Marry me," he said, the words simple, yet weighted with a depth of meaning that resonated in the small, cluttered apartment. Jiang Wan's mind raced. Marry him? Again. But this time, it was different. This time, he wasn't Fugue, the kind stranger who had offered her a lifeline. He was Fu Nanxiu, the wealthy, powerful man whose life was shrouded in mystery. A wave of uncertainty washed over her. Could she trust him? Could she risk her heart, her children's future, on this man? He saw the hesitation in her eyes, the flicker of doubt. "I know this is unexpected," he said, his voice laced with a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "But I need you to trust me. I need you to let me be a part of your lives, not as Fugue, but as Fu Nanxiu." He reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. The children, sensing their mother's uncertainty, rushed forward, their small hands tugging at her skirt. "Mama, marry Fugue," they cried, their voices filled with innocent enthusiasm. Their simple plea, their unwavering faith in him, tipped the scales. She placed her hand in his, the warmth of his touch a surprising comfort. "From now on," he said, his voice firm and resolute, "you will be my Mrs. Fu." His words, a declaration of intent, echoed in the small apartment, a promise of a future they would face together, a future built on a foundation of secrets, betrayals, and unexpected reunions. The children cheered, their joyous cries a testament to the resilience of hope, a testament to the enduring power of family, however unconventional it may be. Jiang Wan, looking at the man who was now her husband, felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a fragile ember in the darkness of her past, promising a brighter future, a future she would fight for, a future they would build together, brick by brick, secret by secret. The aroma of ginger and garlic hung heavy in the air, a comforting blanket against the evening chill that seeped through the restaurant's large windows. Jiang Wan inhaled deeply, the familiar scent a balm against the lingering anxiety that clung to her like a second skin. Tonight felt different. Final. Like a chapter closing, a book almost finished. Across the round table, bathed in the warm glow of the overhead lamps, sat her 5 treasures, her reason for existing, Tao, Hua, Li, Lu, and Mei. Their faces, smudged with remnants of sweet and sour sauce, were alight with childish glee, their chatter a vibrant melody against the softer hum of conversations around them. A pang of guilt shot through her, sharp and sudden. How could she have ever doubted? Ever believed they were gone? The thought, even now, made her breath catch in her throat. Beside her, a hand reached out, warm and strong, covering hers. She turned to meet Fu Nanxio's eyes, the gentle depth in them a silent reassurance. He hadn't spoken a word, yet she knew exactly what he was thinking, the unspoken connection between them as tangible as the air they breathed. "They're happy," he finally murmured, his voice a low rumble that only she could hear. "They are," she echoed, the tightness in her chest easing a fraction. "We are." The words felt fragile, like delicate glass ornaments that might shatter at the slightest touch. Yet, they also held a weight, a truth she hadn't dared to acknowledge until this very moment. Mei, ever the observant one, tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, are you sad?" Her large, innocent eyes searched Jiang Wan's face with a depth that belied her tender age. Jiang Wan managed a small smile, stroking the child's soft cheek. "No, sweetheart. Mama's just thinking. Thinking of the long, arduous journey that had led them to this moment. Thinking of the pain, the fear, the uncertainty that had shadowed every step. And thinking, most of all, of the overwhelming relief that now washed over her, a gentle tide erasing the remnants of her past despair." Across the table, Tao, the eldest and the most protective, declared with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster, "Papa will take care of us, Mama." He promised. A chuckle escaped Fu Nanxio's lips. He ruffled Tao's hair affectionately. "I did, didn't I?" His gaze met Jiang Wan's again, a flicker of something intense, almost possessive, flaring in his eyes. It was a look she was becoming accustomed to, a look that spoke of a love so deep, so profound, that it threatened to consume her. A love that had been forged in secrecy, in hardship, in the crucible of shared pain and unwavering loyalty. The arrival of steaming plates of dumplings brought a welcome distraction. The children's attention shifted immediately, their excited chatter filling the air once more. Jiang Wan watched them, a quiet joy blooming in her chest. This was her family. Whole. Complete. A miracle she hadn't dared to dream of. Later, as the evening wound down, Fu Nanxio drove them back to their new home, a place that finally felt like a sanctuary, not a hiding place. Jiang Wan leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, watching the city lights blur past. The job at the design firm was a fresh start, a chance to reclaim her passion, to build a life independent of the shadows of the past. It was Fu Nanxio who had encouraged her, who had believed in her even when she hadn't believed in herself. He had quietly pulled strings, subtly arranged things, always careful to maintain the facade of their separate lives. But she knew, deep down, that it was his unwavering support that had paved the way. The car pulled up outside their building. As Fu Nanxiu turned off the engine, he turned to her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice unusually hesitant. Jiang Wan's heart skipped a beat. Had something gone wrong? Was the fragile peace they had built about to crumble? "Jiang Kursin," he paused, as if searching for the right words. "She knows." A wave of icy fear washed over Jiang Wan. Kursin, her stepsister, a woman consumed by envy and greed. The thought of her knowing the truth, of the potential danger it posed to their family, sent a shiver down her spine. "She approached me today," Fu Nanxiu continued, his voice low and steady. "She wants a share of the Jiang family fortune. In exchange for her silence." Jiang Wan closed her eyes, trying to control the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. Kursin was a viper, ready to strike at any moment. "Don't worry," Fu Nanxiu reassured her, his hand reaching out to gently cup her face. "I won't let her hurt you. Or the children." His thumb brushed against her cheek, a tender gesture that belied the steely determination in his eyes. "I've already taken care of it." He didn't elaborate, and she didn't press him. There was a darkness in him, a part of him that remained hidden, a part of him that dealt with the shadows that threatened to encroach on their lives. She trusted him, implicitly, completely. He was her protector, her shield against the world. As they walked into the building, hand in hand, the children rushed to greet them, their laughter echoing in the hallway. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of her family, Jiang Wan felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. The future was still uncertain, the past still cast a long shadow, but for now, in this moment, they were safe. They were together. And that was all that mattered. The weight of the world seemed to lift, replaced by a lightness, a hope that whispered promises of brighter days to come. The book wasn't finished yet. A new chapter had just begun.